Good evening and welcome back once again to Formula Racing League. I am always the Pink Pig and we're getting ready here for the finale at Oulton Park. It's been a fiercely contested season and today we find out who will be crowned the inaugural FRL Btcc champion. Who is your money on tonight? The current championship stand-ins are Dan Davis currently sits on top of the tree on 657 points, with Marcin Morel in second place on 588 points. Theodore Ivanov is in third on 574, with Dave Goodway, the pre-season favourite, in fourth place on 537 points. Mr. Sergio Ozario is in fifth place on 522 points. And with a total of 188 points, it's still all up for grabs. The format, as always, is qualifying for 15 minutes, starting in, well, now. Race 1 is 20 minutes, and the grid for that will be set by qualifying. Race 2 will be another 20 minutes, and the grid for that will be set by the final results of Race 1. Race 3 and the final race of the season will be once again for 20 minutes, and the grid will be set by the finishing positions in Race 2 and a reverse grid at a random point between 6th and 15th place. Oulton Park. What do we have to say about Oulton Park? We're racing today on the island circuit and it's the second longest of the track layouts, as I'm just going to quickly sort my screens out. It's the second longest of the track layouts at Oulton. Rather than continuing around the long, fast left-hander of the Island Bend, the banked 180-degree right-hander of Shell Oils, Island Bend becomes the Island Hairpin, and the Shell Oils is missing out completely, as the drivers are just coming out onto track. You can see they have 5 seconds remaining until they're allowed to leave the pits, so we will try and catch up with one of those drivers who has been fortunate enough to leave the pits, as we see Marcin Morel. The incredibly tight hairpin is the first gear in pretty much any car or bike. It's a fantastic overtaking opportunity for both passing on the way into the corner and for lining a pass on the way down the following straight by getting more traction and a better exit of the hairpin. The island layout means you also lose Britain chicane. Whilst this tight left-right-left chicane is enjoyable to drive and encourages you to use a lot of curb on both sides, it doesn't add much as an overtaking spot, so nothing is really lost from that perspective. The rest of the island circuit is the same as the international layout, with a circuit length of 2.26 miles, or for our European colleagues 3.616 kilometres, with 3 left-handers and 6 right-handers. The pole position starts on the left-hand side. The lap record here in the island circuit is a 1:18.556, held by Tom Blomqvist in the Tatus FR2000, or the Formula Renault 2 litre. So that is enough of the pre-race formalities. The drivers are now out on track. You can see Marcin Morel on his outlap in the Vauxhall Astra. What have your thoughts been on the season so far? How we are prepared for season 2 with a bit of the world touring cars and visiting multiple circuits across the world, which has been released out today. We will have a quick grab and look at a preview of what that actually entails. Well, I did think I was going to have a look, but we've got the Btcc 90s next Monday at 8:15, which takes on the 90s touring cars, and they will be racing at, so you see Cadwell Park, so you've got the Volvo S40, the Peugeot 406, 405, the BMW E36, the Ford Sierra RS 500 and the Vauxhall Cavalier with the Nissan Primera. So some proper old school cars lining up for that event. And we also have the New Year's party at Macau in the wonderful, let's double check before I get this wrong, in the Clio Cup RS. So once again, that's free 15 minutes races on the 2nd of January to get your appetite whet for that one. Almost sounded quite erotic there, didn't it? And have I managed to close down the other screen I wanted, which I probably have. Nope, still haven't opened. That's good news. So drivers have already started to set laps. So we have Marcin Morel currently in our provisional pole position of a 125.4. Dan Davis, our championship leader, 6/10 behind. Dave Goodway has just overtaken him and popped himself into P2. Adel Bueno in 4th place, Harrison Williams in 5th place, Theodore Ivanov 6th, Rudolph in 7th, Chris Jones in 8th place, Tom Brunel in 9th. Still to set a lap are Anthony Johns, Alan Palmer, Barry Dunn, Louis and Mark Stewart. As we just say that, Mark Stewart manages to pop himself into 9th place, so that's a nice little effort from him in the Toyota Corolla. We'll try and join in on a lap on board with one of these drivers and to get a bit of a feel for the Oulton Park Island circuit. We're quite familiar with the international one from the days of ACC, so we will see what this one entails. You can see one of the differences there. So rather than going around the banked hairpin, you go through a tighter hairpin. You miss out the chicane. And then you tackle the second of the 3 chicanes. So let's see now. So here is Theodore Ivanov just bouncing across the exit curb as we go down into the dangerous left-hander. It never seems to end. One of the shorter circuit disappears as off to the right just there, so breathe the car back over to the right-hand side. This quick left-hander is usually very tricky, which is actually missed out into a hairpin, and then we miss out the first of the chicanes, power back up the hill, and you're then greeted by a right chicane. Try and avoid the bollards, as Theodore just about manages to do so. 2/10 down in the first sector, breeze over to the left hand side of the track again, start to get that throttle down. The next of the right-handers is one of those ones we want to carry as much speed as possible without disappearing off the tracks, as we see now on the right hand side. Touch the bollards as much as you can, double apex, power down on the left hand side once more into the final right-hander of this Oulton Park Island circuit, as he completely misses his braking zone, was 0.06 of a second up in the second sector, and that is unfortunate. So now we jump with Marcin Morel currently in 2nd place. Theodore Ivanov has provisional pole positions of a 25.1, so it was his own lap that he was completed. Marcin has decided to abandon that. Here is Dave Goodway just starting another lap now. Target time, as you can see, is a 25.127. A little bit of traffic leaving the pits, but has managed to avoid that quite comfortably, breeding across down the left-hander again, try and keep inside the track limits in that Ford Focus. Currently in 6th position, 4th position in the championship. We'll try and keep as up to date as possible with the championship standings as we go through each of the races. Anthony Johns pops himself into 3rd place, just 1/10, just under 2/10 behind Theodore's time. Dave Goodway was quickest through the first sector as we approach the chicane once more. Manages to take that nice and cleanly, breathe back over to the right hand side again, try and get as good as an exit as possible as we go towards the end of the second sector. Dave Goodway, probably the pre-season championship favourite, was 2/10 down in that second sector, so nothing major there. As we jump on board with Dan Davis as we start to, it looks like he's on a bit of a slow lap, just trying to get a bit of a gap to the cars in front of him. Barry Dunn has been one of these drivers ever present this season in the BMW. Mark Stewart recently joined the joyous avenue of the PC admin team after himself and Mario Morano created an event which will, well, tickle your fancy. It's the old but gold, but renamed. So some of the cars that get a little bit less of love across a championship season, and it'll be hopefully an interesting event. The cars will perform as they're designed with no bop, whereas all the other FRL season races on ACC have the LFM bop, of course. So just behind Mark Stewart is Christopher Jones in the Infinity. That's going to be a heavy car to manage around this circuit. Might have a decent pump down the straights, but through some of the tight twisty bits, there's a big car to navigate, whereas the Ford Focus or Cupra probably have a bit more of an opportunity to be a bit more nimble through the corners. So Matas Pruzak say, go Morale, go, go, go. So currently second in the championship. We know where your money is lying for tonight's event. So we will obviously try and keep an eye out on Martin and how he performs throughout tonight's events. It's just starting another hot lap now, just coming through the hairpin. 1/10 up. Is this going to be a new provisional pole lap? So this is one of the more nimbler cars on the circuit. Oh, ow, not that nimble. Ouch. And straight away jumps to the pits. How is one of the less nimble cars? Theodore has performed extremely well throughout this season. Has probably been let down with a bit of consistency in some events where he's not had the best of start and has had to climb back through the ranks. Speaking of consistency, Dan Davis pops himself into P1 with a 25.108, 200ths of a second quicker than Theodore's time. So that is the new benchmark for tonight's pole position. We've got just under 5 minutes left of qualifying. Dan is now starting to come up to some traffic. Rudolph Brio is one of those drivers in front. He's caught up into some traffic as well, so it's going to be difficult for Dan to improve on that lap. Tom Brunel currently 1.5 seconds behind the pole sisters' times. With the greatest respect, I don't think Tom is necessarily aiming for pole position, probably looking towards the top 10, our techie Tom. And that's a 27.4. So how is Mr. Goodway doing? He's on a new outlap. Martin Morale is on an outlap. Theodore Ivanov is in the pits, consoling himself, ready for another go. Anthony Johns currently in 4th place. Is just going through turn 1, drifting the Hyundai through that corner there. That was probably a sketchy moment, but manages to navigate it. Alan Palmer and Harrison Williams and Dan Davis are the drivers in the pits with 4 minutes left of qualifying to go before we start our first race of the evening. I love some of these liveries, and I'm actually going to Thruxton next season for the BTC. That's not going to be a valid lap, I'm sure, from Dan, as he indeed jumps to the pits. So Dan's back out on track. Theodore's back out on track, and we got Martin Morel out on track as well. Anthony Johns we just saw in the pits. Harrison Williams is in the pits as well. Adol Bueno has just gone fastest through sector 1. Is this going to be a new pole position time for Adel? Oh, let down in the 3rd sector by 0.4 of a second. That is not going to be what he wanted to do tonight. David Goodway is just under 0.3 down through sector 1. Currently in 7th place in the meat of the sandwich. That's not going to be where he needs to be. There is no Sergio. Where is the Sergio? Currently 5th place in the standings. Is going to be losing that one potentially for tonight. Dan Davis is on his outlap. We've got 2 minutes 4 seconds. We'll jump on board with Theodore Ivanov as he starts one of his final laps of tonight. Going through turn 1, touch the curb on the right hand side and get over to the left as quick as possible. Get the power down. We've got a little bit of traffic ahead as we go through this tricky left-hander once more. It's kind of double apexes itself before getting back on the power down this straight before the right hand hairpin. Remember, we miss out on the left-hander and the banked hairpin. A little bit tricky under braking, as Theodore has found out quite a few times this season with lots of lock tyres. 0.2 a second down. How is Martin doing? Just left turn 1 and turn 2. Has a spun round BMW on his eye line, but managed to navigate the hairpin quite nicely. So the Vauxhall Astra is going to start climbing up the hill towards the next chicane. 1 minute and 30 seconds left. Remember last time we were on board with Martin, absolutely pummeled into that barrier. This time though is a 1/10.5 up on Dan Davis's time. Theodore Ivanov 200ths of a second down. Marcin Morel currently 1.5 tenths down. Harrison Williams 2.3 tenths down. So it's a second separating the top 8, which is quite a close grid, to be honest. Martin quickest through sector 2. This all's going to rely on this right-hander. We see some of the scuff marks from where the car is bouncing across the ground. So Marcin Morel's getting a bit of a bumpy ride, but is this going to be provisional pole with less than a minute left? Do you know what? It is. Lost time in the third sector, but that is our provisional pole time. That's going to prick up the interest of Dan Davis, who's just about to start another lap. So we'll jump back on board with him shortly. Where is Dave Goodway? Is out on an out lap. Is he going to have enough time? He's just going to have to hope and pray that there's no traffic ahead of him. But coming across down the start-finish straight now, he's got 20 seconds to be able to complete a lap. So, where is Dan? Dan is just going through the hairpin now, getting that power down, coming out of the hairpin, taking as much as his curve as he can. 0.2 down on his personal best. We've got Martin Morel, Theodore Ivanov, Chris Jones, Alan Palmer and Rudolph all in the pits. Don't look like we've got Alan Brown, but looks like things on the grid either. So that's 2 prominent drivers missing from tonight's race in Sergio Azario and Alan Brown. But here is Dan Davis now on his final attempt to try and get pole position down in the second sector as well. I don't think that's going to be a possibility. Let's have a look at Anthony Johns, 0.5 of a second down in sector 1. Where is Harrison Williams? Harrison Williams is just in front of him. And where is Mr. Goodway? Goodway is in the pits. He's not going to be starting in the position he wants to start in. Anthony Johns was quickest in sector 2 overall. This could be tight between himself and Marcin Morel. Is he going to get into the intersection between Dan Davis and Marcin Morel as we go through the final corner, getting that power down now? Harrison Williams will be the car directly behind him. Anthony Johns goes into P4. Oh, stays P4. Harrison Williams has finished his lap, so that's not going to be a new lap from him. Adel Bueno in 6th place. Mark Stewart just about to cross the line as well in... he's not going to trouble the timing sheets for that. So our top 5 for race 1 is going to be Harrison Williams in 5th place, Anthony Johns in 4th place, Theodore Ivanov in 3rd, our current championship leader Dan Davis in 2nd place, and Marcin Morel in 1st place with a pole lap time of 24.903. And for qualifying, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to be it. So, BEA Beautiful, a line from Bruce Almighty, I think it is. Hello, Mark GG. Championship fight currently sits between Sergio Azario in 5th, but not here tonight. Dave Goodway in 4th place on 537, Theodore Ivanov in 3rd place on 574, Marcin Morel, our current pole position driver, in 2nd place on 588, and Dan Davis leading the way on 657 points. So I'm just going to do some quick calculations in my spreadsheets. Anyone who knows me knows I'm fond of a spreadsheet. just to see the gaps between the drivers. So there is 69 points between first and second, 83 points between 83 points gap between first and third. Drivers now have a little 5-minute warm-up to get prepped ready for tonight's first event. Right, I will leave you with the pictures as I'm going to make a quick drink. Back in 2 ticks. Hello, I am back. Quick vape, and we are ready for some action. We've got just under 30 seconds left until race 1 commences, and it should be hopefully a fun evening of racing. So just looking at the comments on the stream, so Plava says go Dan Davis for the win, and Techie Tom for the win from Mark GG. To be honest, Techie Tom has the whole reason why this event is actually happening, or any of these events on rFactor. Firstly, down to Chris Jones, I will say, came up with the idea, created the initial servers, and did an absolute sterling job. And then Techie Tom come in and has dealt with a few obstacles along the way. So Huge kudos to those two gentlemen. There's also great work behind the scenes from Dave Goodway, making sure all the standards, even manually key in the last 2 rounds, which was great. So we have now our driver's going to be coming out on the grid. I'm just getting rid of the stuff that makes my computer crap itself, and we will get to see what's going on. So just a reminder of our top 10: Chris Jones in 10th, Mark Stewart in 9th, Barry Dunn in 8th, Dave Goodway in 7th, Adel Bueno in 6th place, and then we got Harrison Williams 5th, Anthony Johns 4th, Theodore Ivanov in 3rd, Dan Davis in 2nd, and Marcin Morel in 1st place as the drivers line themselves up on the grid, ready and raring to go. Huge thank you to all our sponsors. You can see it just under my beautiful Pig logo, without whom nothing happens, essentially. So yes, this is going to be very, very, very exciting. Dan Davis, Marcin Morel, currently 1 and 2 in the championship. Theodore Ivanov in 3rd in the championship. So all to play for. Everything can go wrong, could go wrong, and we are go for race 1 of tonight, and a very even start between Marcin Morel. However, Dan Davis has got a little bit of a jump. Theodore Ivanov is in a very tricky, precarious position, but Dan Davis has gone wide, very wide. Back onto the track, somehow avoids complete and utter death. But Marcin Morel leads the way with Theodore Ivanov in 2nd place, Anthony Johns in 3rd place. Where is Dan Davis? Dan Davis is on track and he is riding. So Mr. Plava, your driver is still alive. Dave Goodway has bumped himself up to 4th place. Oh, the hairpin. Wow, the hairpin. Not quite sure what happened in the build-up there, but Marcin Morel leads the way. Theodore Ivanov is in 2nd place. Anthony Johns is in 3rd place. We are now able to get some of our information up. There we go. So Marcin Morel in 1st, Theodore Ivanov in 2nd, Anthony Johns 3rd, Dan Davis is in 4th place, Harrison Williams in 5th, Barry Dunn is in 6th, Tom Brunel 7th, Rudolph in 8th, Louis in 9th, Chris Jones in 10th, Mark Stewart in 11th, Dave Goodway in 12th position with Adel Bueno in 13th place. We do seem to have lost a driver. I think that's Alan Palmer potentially. Right, so fight for 5th place, 4th place even, is between Harrison Williams and Barry Dunn. Barry Dunn in the BMW. Right behind, the weather looks quite bright and sunny, and that's in huge contradiction to everything that's happened in the UK today, because I think in the UK there has been some parts that have had thunderstorms and some have had beautiful rays of sunshine, and it looks like Oulton Park is one of those places that has been sunny today. Remember, we use real life weather for these events. As we got Tom has run very wide on exit, that's going to compromise his straight down towards the hairpin, which has allowed Rudolph to get the bit of a jump ahead and potentially have a look down the inside. Is Rudolph going to go full-blown send into the hairpin? No, he is not, and probably wisely not to do. So Marcin Morel currently has a 1.2 seconds lead. He's doing everything he can to get himself into a best position as possible for races 2 and 3 in terms of the championship. Theodore in 2nd place, 1.1 seconds now behind. Anthony Johns in 3rd, Dan Davis in 4th, Harrison Williams in 5th place. And that was a slight burp. But there we go. So Rudolph is potentially going to have a look. No, he's not. He's going to be relying on a potential mistake. Fastest lap of the race so far has been produced by Marcin Morel for 25.287. Dave Goodway knows that he has a hell of a lot of work to do, and he is currently 4 seconds behind the Spider Monkey of Mark Stewart. Adel Bueno in 13th place is a further 4 seconds behind Dave Goodway. So quite a lot of time to make up. Tom Brunel managing to keep Rudolph at bay. We got Louis and Chris Jones directly behind. seeking in that battle for 9th place. Really half a tenth. See these big heavy cars really struggling through that hairpin. Where I thought they would struggle was probably through the next corner. But remember, we race here on GT3 and GT4 cars, and a number of these corners are exactly the same. We have... Well, that was stupid. Trying to figure out who that car was, but that was... Is that... Oh! No, it's not Louis. I don't think. Barry Dunn seemed to have lost it and then decided that it was a perfectly reasonable thing to rejoin directly into those cars, as we got Harrison Williams, who was just off the track and just managed to avoid a car coming through. So some interesting decisions when it comes to rejoining the track have plagued our first 5 minutes, with two scary moments. We got Louis and Mark Stewart fighting for 8th and 9th position. And I do apologise, Barry, if that wasn't you, but Barry has now gone into the pits. It could well be Louis who did that stupid rejoin. Not entirely sure. Right, let's see if these two drivers can keep it clean. Once again, Tom seems to struggle on the exit of that hairpin. Going down now towards the chicane, the right, left, right chicane. Traction on the exit is very, very important. We've got Barry Dunn and Harrison Williams both in the pits at the moment. Marcin Morel, our runaway leader, by 1.9 seconds to Theodore Ivanov in 3rd. Anthony Johns will be feeling quite good about himself in 3rd place, but he is under pressure now from Dan Davis, who is starting to chase him down a little bit more aggressively. 0.6 of a second now separate Anthony and Dan Davis. We can see Theodore just in front of these drivers. Harrison Williams and Chris Jones currently. So we've got 3 drivers all in the pits. Barry Dunn, Harrison Williams and Chris Jones all in the pits, and laps down on their competitors. We've got 14 minutes left of this race 1. This potentially could be key in terms of the championship. But I think drivers in front probably need Dan to have DNFs in at least one of the races. But still have 2 further races to be able for that to happen. We hope nobody DNFs or gets disconnected, as what has happened once to Dan this season as well, whereas Marcin and Theodore have largely remained ever present in this championship. As we approach the hairpin, you can see how close Dan is getting, both on the entrance and exit of these corners. A little bit on the straights, the Hyundai starts to pull away, but the Toyota Corolla does seem to be a bit more nimble through some of the these corners. So let's have a look from the camera angles to see how this looks like. But yeah, you see Dan is gaining, but it's not going to be the easiest track to overtake on. Hear some tyres squealing in the braking zones. We've got just over 12 minutes. Dan's taking that wider line through the exit of the final corner, heading down now into turn 1. You can see the markings on the track are built for cars and motorbikes, of course. Dan runs wide through turn 1, but seems to carry more speed on exit than Anthony is able to do so. Anthony takes a bit more of a tighter line through turn 2. Just trying to compare the two drivers and their different techniques, but at the moment there's nothing major that's given Dan an opportunity, but well, that's not going to help his cause, running very wide. But Theodore has dropped back a bit. Louis has unfortunately DNF'd, whereas Harrison Williams, Barry Dunn and Chris Jones have all repaired their damage and they're back on the track fighting away. Anthony doing his best to try and flip his car through the corner. So this is our fight for 3rd place. We've got Tom in the fight for 5th with Rudolph. And is that Dave Goodway directly behind them as well? I think it is. Yes, it is. So he's going to be watching with interest on how this battle carries on. But back on board with a fight for P2 as Dan sticks his nose down the inside. And sensibly, and huge sportsmanship credit to Dan, realised he made the contact and waited for Anthony to return to the track. So a huge FRL well done for you, and a brownie point. What that brownie point gets you is absolutely naffle, but I'm sure to all spectators, yeah, close call indeed for Dan. I do try and look at as much of the chat as possible, as we can see Dave Goodway using, I wouldn't even say all the track limits, that's definitely not the track limits, to try and get the move completed on Rudolph through the exit now, it down towards the hairpin. Into the braking zone. Has Dave managed to get ahead? Get ahead? He has indeed. He is now up into 6th place, trying to chase down Tom in 5th place. See Mark Stewart and Adol Bueno going for it, and there's potentially a lap car in there as well. Sounded like a misgear. So let's try and have a look. So you see Rudolph's dropped a bit away from Techie Tom in terms of that battle after Dave Goodway successfully managed to pass him. Dave Goodway managed to carry so much more speed. Techie Tom runs wide, and that's kind of gifted the place to Dave, who's moved now up to 5th place. So we've got our P2 driver in the championship currently leading the way. P3 in the championship in 2nd place, and then our P1 driver Dan Davis currently in 4th place. P4 driver is currently in 5th place in the championship. So I'm trying to figure out how much will change in terms of the stand-ins, but Rudolph is now right on the back of Techie Tom. You can see Dave Goodway starting to disappear off in the distance. Dave has a huge 12 seconds to trying to claw back on Dan to get into 4th place. You probably feel that he needs probably 3 wins in these 3 races. As Rudolph managed to get quite a good bit of traction. Tom struggles on exit coming out of that corner. Is this going to give the opportunity to Rudolph to make a move in towards the chicane? I think not, but he is definitely closer. He's now only 3/4 tenths of a second behind Techie Tom, and this is a fight that could go right down to the wire. So we see Dan Davis now Dan is now starting to climb onto the back of Anthony Johns once more. Remember, they had that contact into the final corner. Fastest lap of the race so far has been completed by Theodore Ivanov with a 25.0. But that still leaves him 3 seconds behind Martin Morel in 1st place. Dan gets a great exit through the turn 1 as they're going to go side by side into the left-hander. He's going to have to concede the position initially. Anthony Johns goes into defensive mode, getting their car onto the apex, making it very, very difficult for Dan to make a move past. But Anthony, once again, his defence is holding firm. Yeah, just revert back to what we saw a couple of laps ago on the final corner. Dan looked to make a move down the inside. That gap closed very quickly. Contact was made with Anthony, which forced him off the track. And then Dan got the brownie point by allowing Anthony to return and retain that position. So fair credit to him there. Will he be so generous if it comes down to it in race 3? Yeah, it was. Sorry, just referring to the comments. It was a bit of a classic touring car move, but something which we're not used to seeing here in Formula Racing League. Using the grass to have an overtake. I think there was a clip on one of the on the Twitch stream. I think it was Silverstone, where Kagulu, our keyboard warrior, managed to pass a couple of cars on the grass, and that was a a bit of a shock to the system. But Dan Davis is definitely closer now. Is he going to try and make the move down the inside? No, not this time once again. Anthony goes defensive. Dan runs wide on the exit, trying to get as much speed as possible. We've got 6 minutes left of this race one. Dan trying to get himself onto the podium. Trying to see, so we've got Chris Jones, unfortunately, is in the pits once more. Barry Dunn is in 10th place, 36 seconds behind Harrison Williams in 10th, sorry. Mark Stewart in 11th. We've got Rudolph on the back of Tom Brunel once more, so we've got Mark Stewart in 9th, Adel Bueno in 8th place. Dave Goodway is somehow behind these drivers. I can only assume pushing had an unfortunate off, so he's going to have to do all that hard work again and try and overtake Rudolph and Techie Tom once more. Tom has managed to disappear a little bit. Well, he's managed to get a little bit of a gap from these drivers. Let's go back to our fight for P3. Anthony has managed to hold on to this for about 10-15 minutes of the race so far, and has held quite firm. I think this is the closest he gets, is into turn 2, but there's just no gap to be able to make the move. Potentially the best place to do so is sending it on into the chicane, but again that gap just increases a little bit. Dan Neg looks to try and go side by side on the exit, doesn't manage to do that as they climb back up the hill towards the chicane. So yeah, it seems as though turn 2 is Dan's best opportunity, where he certainly gets the closest in a position to be able to make a move. Either that or the final corner, but we've seen the final corner has become quite risky. So Goodway has gone back past Brunel and Rudolph into 5th place, so that move once again has happened. He's now 16 seconds behind this battle for P3 between Anthony Johns and Dan Davis. Dan Davis once again quite wide on exit, kicking up some dust. Is he now going to go send it? He is alongside, and that was a fantastic move, but brilliant driving from Anthony Johns. Contact is made, and Anthony Johns manages somehow to keep 3rd position. Is the move going to be made now down into 2-1? Once again, turn 1, they're once again side by side. Dan managed to send it in. Anthony goes for the tighter line. Dan runs wide, off on the grass, and falls once again behind Anthony Johns. This is a terrific battle for the podium place. Theodore Ivanov 2.5 seconds. We can see cars up the top of the hill just in the distance, but somehow Anthony Johns' defence remains firm. But is it going to break like a chastity belt on prom night? Eventually there will be a key to unlock it. Dan is just searching through his pockets to find that one, and if you don't believe that is a wonderful link, then you're listening to the wrong stream. I completely agree. I always find this as the drivers start to thin out, and the drivers who genuinely want to race, the quality of racing definitely increases. And apart from 2 awful rejoins, race 1 has been absolutely epic, and the epitome of that has been Anthony Johns and Dan Davis, who were fought tooth and nail for this podium position. Let's have a quick check up and see what Rudolph and Tom are doing in the fight for P7. I will try and keep an eye on the gap between Dan Davis and Dan and Anthony. That gap has gone down from 3 seconds to 1.6 seconds in P1 and P2. Last time around, Theodore was 0.6 of a second faster than Marcin Morel. Marcin really needs that race win. He needs a hope and pray. Anthony managed to keep Dan at bay to stop him from getting on that podium. So let's see Dan and Anthony continue their fight. We've got roughly bouncy on the exit curb. Dan is going to try and go around the outside. He's on the grass, managed to keep the car on track. Anthony still has the racing line into the sweeping right-hander. Is Dan going to send a move down the inside once more? Anthony's utilised the switchback several occasions, has been absolutely fantastic at doing so. We'll keep an eye on turn 1 and turn 2. Dan trying to keep as much of the speed going through that corner as possible. Is he in a position to make a move down into turn 1? No, not by the looks of things. Is he going to hold back and potentially make a move down into turn 2? We will wait and see. We've got a yellow flag in Sector 1. Yellow flag in Sector 1, and that has brought Marcin Morel and Theodore Ivanov very, very close together. 0.8 of a second. We've got a lap car who's just disappeared through the chicane, which is probably a great idea. But Marcin Morel and Theodore Ivanov are going for it. Theodore's gone for the move down into the chicane. He runs very wide and contact is made, but that was Theodore running very, very deep. Marcin Morel holds on to P1. Where is Theodore going to come out? He's still going to have a gap between himself and Anthony Johns. Dan Davis. Oh, this is going to be the end of the race, and Marcin Morel goes through the final corner, goes through the last sector now. Is there gonna be one more lap? We will wait and see. Remember, you can follow us on Instagram on FRL Race Hub as Marcin Morel comes across the line to win race 1. And huge congratulations to him. Theodore Ivanov with some last lap dramatics. Dan Davis has got past Anthony Johns. We followed these two drivers for the majority of the 20 minutes, and the only time we're not watching him, Dan Davis gets a 3rd place. Anthony Johns into 4th place. Dave Goodway will come across the line in 5th place. And then we've got Rudolph in 6th place. Ado Bueno will come across the line after an incident on lap 1 in 7th place. Tom Brunel in 8th place. Then we've got Mark Stewart in 9th place. Followed by, it is Harrison Williams in 10th place. Barry Dunn's already in the pits, and Chris Jones and Louis unfortunately DNF'd. Was that Chris Jones on the side? Yeah, there was Chris Jones on the side, who finishes 12th. Oh, well, that was an epic race, which threw a little spanner in the works towards the end. So I'm going to try and play with spreadsheets. So Dan was 3rd. Wrong sheet. Dan was 3rd, Marcin was 1st, Theodore was 2nd, Dave was 5th, and no Sergio. So the gap has creeped down slightly. So we've got Dan Davis currently in 1st place on 721 points, Marcin Morel in 2nd place on 654 points. So that gap dropped to 58 points. Theodore Ivanov in 3rd place on 634 points, so 78 points the gap, 20 points behind Marcin Morel. Dave Goodway in 4th place on 585 points, 127 points back. So don't forget, we have still 122 points to play with. So mathematically, Dave Goodway is now out of the championship, and remains our Dan Davis, Marcin Morel and Theodore Ivanov for that battle. So we are just having a moment where the server likes to load. And I'm going to take a short break to catch my breath and to prepare for the next event. Hello, I am back. I've just been sent the grid for race 2, so I think it's worthwhile just recapping that. Unfortunately, Alan Palmer's VR crashed. He will start in 14th place with Louis in 13th, Chris Jones in 12th position, Barry Dunn in 11th, Harrison Williams in 10th, Mark Stewart will be in 9th position, Techie Tom in 8th, Adel Bueno in 7th, Rudolph in 6th, Dave Goodway in 5th position, Anthony Johns in 4th. Our top three are our top three in the stand-ins, with Dan Davis in 3rd place, Theodore Ivanov in 2nd place, and Marcin Morel in 1st place. So that will be our grid for starting on race number 2 tonight. We are also in the week of the finales, so on Sunday night we started off with the end of the season in on PS5 and Sprint Sundays at Indianapolis. On tonight we have the finale for both Taco Tuesday Tier 1 and Tier 2, and also the Btcc finale. Our finales on Thursday will be the Masters, presented by Raven for both the Pro and Silver class, and you will get some beautiful commentary by the Pink Pig for the Pro Am and Am class. For the and that will the week will then be rounded out with the finale of the late night series, where you'll be once again inflicted with my voice for 2 20-minute races. So we have a lot of the prizes up for grabs for the final race of the season. So I'm just trying to figure out okay, it's fine. I was just making sure that the other streams were live, so we've got Tom Cairns on the Formula Racing League TV YouTube channel as well, commentating on the final race at Indianapolis on Taco Tuesday. So they should have just started their race. So I will just try and do something whilst we have a little bit of a gap. So this is, apologies for the poor picture, but this is Taco Tuesday, currently with 45 minutes left of the race. Martin Cruz currently leads away, Sterling in 2nd place, Van der Waal in 3rd, Machowski in 4th place, Maluka in 5th, Prentice in 6th, McKinnon in 7th, Goodoff Rory, in 8th, Kleiber in 9th, Ascenso in 10th. So those 10 drivers are not separated by much, but Martin Cruz currently leads away by 12.6 seconds in the night in the Indianapolis on PlayStation 5. So that is something to keep an eye on, as we've got a couple of moments left of this short interlude. So Prezek says, nice Martin, more. Sure, there's a few gifs we could put over that one. So in the final couple of seconds before we start race 2 of 3. Just a quick recap in terms of the standings. I've got about 90 different sheets open at the same time. We've got a gap of, so Theodore Ivanov 78 points behind, Marcin Morel 58 points behind, and Dan Davis currently top of the tree on 712 points. What will the weather bring for race 2? Will there be a change in conditions, or will they be largely the same?
Attention grid, will all non-essential personnel leave the grid now?
And the marshals have given us our warning. We are almost getting ready for race number 2. showing some interesting. There we go. So we got drivers on the track. So let's turn our tower and our timing board off, ready for the start of race number 2 of 3. So we are almost halfway point of tonight's racing. So Martin Morel will start in pole position, Theodore Ivanov in 2nd, Dan Davis in 3rd, Anthony Johns in 4th, Dave Goodway in 5th, Rudolph in 6th place, Adam Bueno in 7th, Brunel in 8th, Stewart in 9th, and Harrison Williams in 10th. Barry Dunn, Chris Jones and Alan Palmer will start 11th, 12th and 13th respectively. So our race 1 winner is in your foreground. You've got Theodore just behind with Dan Davis in 3rd place. Will the battle commence once more? We are ready and we are go, and Dave Goodway jumped the start. That's huge. Dave Goodway has jumped the start. So Martin Morel has the inside line for turn 1. Dave Goodway has, and Theodore Ivanov leads the way with Martin Morel in 2nd place. Challenged closely behind by Dan Davis in 3rd place. Theodore goes wide and has led Martin to come back through. And our top 3 in the championship are 1, 2 and 3 on track as well, with Anthony Johns just sitting behind. Into the braking zone for the hairpin. Anthony Johns goes deep. And there's contact behind, but they all seem to have made it through. Dan Davis manages to retain 3rd position. Martin Morel has 1st position. So Dave Goodway is going to have a drive-through of some sort, or a stop and go. We jump on board with Anthony Johns, following Dan Davis, Theodore Ivanov and Martin Morel directly behind. So we're going to quickly bring up... No, I don't want the banner. I want that one. We're going to bring up our standing details. Let's have a look at this one, actually. And see what we can decipher from that. So we can see Martin Morel, Theodore, Dan Davis and Anthony Johns fighting away for 1st, 4th, 2nd and 3rd position respectively. So this is our battle for 1st. We've also got Adol Bueno and Dave Goodway fighting it out for 5th position as well. Chris Jones and Barry Dunn have exchanged positions for 11th and 12th. Alan Palmer's in 12th, so I can only assume Barry Dunn's had a bit of an off. He's there in the BMW. But let's go to our fight at the front. That's where we're all interested in. So I don't want the banner. I'm going to go back to that one. I can see more. So 6 tenths. So Martin already has a 6 tenths of a second lead. Anthony Johns, the hunted, now becomes the hunter in him trying to chase down Dan Davis. Yellow flag in sector 1. Adol Bueno is right on the back of Dave Goodway. In fact, they're side by side going into the hairpin. Adol will have the inside line for the first part, but Dave Goodway runs very wide and rejoins, and I think that potentially is his race run, to be honest, as he's now dropping down the grid like a stone, and in fact he has retired to the garage. So Anthony Johns crawling all over the back of Dan Davis. This is the battle from race 1 continuing. We also got Theodore Ivanov trying to chase down Martin Morel going into the final corner. Both of these drivers need Dan not to finish probably in the top 6 for this race to keep it alive. Well, alive for the finale. Tap 25.5 seconds for fastest lap so far. You see the different lines between the heavier and the lighter cars. Martin's able to go a lot tighter on entrance, whereas Theodore has to sweep back in and kind of hit the second part of the apex to carry the speed through. They're very close through the hairpin. No move made there. Dan Davis has a gap of a second now to Anthony Johns, but this is the closest fight on track apart from Palmer and Brunel. As we go once again into the chicane, I saw Martin tackle the bollards in qualifying. He'll be praying that doesn't happen in any of the races tonight, but a little bit of a gap has now developed. Let's have a look and see where Tom and Mark Stewart are fighting it out. And you've also got Barry Dunn against the Dynaco liveried Alan Palmer. Where is Michael Elms this evening? Thinking of cars liveries. We've had just under 5 minutes left. 5 minutes. Oh, Palmer goes off the track and back onto the track. No damage caused, but allows Barry Dunn to claim that position there. Tom Brunel is crawling now and looking at all avenues to pass Mark Stewart, the Spider Monkey versus the Techie Tom, the Belgian bruiser. See a helicopter going off in the distance there. Beautiful place to be able to spectate and watch racing, as majority of the British circuits are. Donington, which we were at previously, it was a beautiful spectator circuit, and as Theodore going to go for the lunge there? Not this time. Anthony Johns has dropped back slightly from Dan Davis, so Dan is going to try and climb onto the back of this fight as Theodore loses it, lost it. Take out some boards, passed by Dan Davis, passed by Anthony Johns. Is this going to give Adol Bueno an opportunity to pass as well? It has, as Theodore moves off the grass. So that second place has now dropped all the way down to 5th place for Theodore Ivanov, and that is not going to be one of his finest moments, I'm afraid. Barry Dunn is in a fight with Mark Stewart for 7th place. But our leader, and in a comfortable-ish position for now, is Martin Morel, leading the way by 1.7 seconds from Dan Davis in 2nd place. And Anthony Johns in 3rd, desperate for that podium after missing out in race 1. So yeah, he's going to be hoping to hold on to that, but this puts Dan in a wonderful position in terms of the championship. Remember, the points format for this is 66 points for the win, 60 for 2nd place. I just caught my eyes on a fight going on behind between Bueno and Anthony Johns, which we will get back on board with. We can also see Theodore Ivanov right on the back of there, so that is a battle for 3rd place. But Bueno is all over the back of Anthony Johns. Is he going to make a send into the final corner? Remember, Anthony had to defend vigorously from Dan Davis for 15 minutes of race number 1. Theodore Ivanov is going to be desperate to try and get through this as quickly as possible. He's alongside Adel into turn number 1, and that move was made nice and easy and comfortably. Is Adel going to come back on him, head down into turn 2? Not this time by the looks of things. It looks as though Theodore has managed to safely secure and move himself up into P4. He's going to want to challenge Anthony Johns as quickly as possible and get himself back onto that podium, but we know how difficult Anthony is to pass. Barry Dunn is in the pits once more. Harrison Williams is 7.8 seconds behind Alan Palmer. 7 seconds Palmer is behind Chris Jones. Chris Jones is a second behind Techie Tom, and Tom has 3-second gap to Mark Stewart. Rudolph holding firm in 6th place at the moment, but this is our fight for 3rd place. As we jump on board of Adel, going through the final sector of this Oulton Park circuit. So in terms of the points, whilst I was back on that, so there is a 6-point gap between 1st and 2nd, so that gap will close slightly. and then there's another 5 points down into third, 4 points down into fourth place. So to keep this championship alive, he probably needs to gain about 20-30 points in this race. Ideally a DNF for Martin will put him in line, as we see Theodore getting very twitchy through turn 2. Into the hairpin. Adel is definitely not gone away, and we've seen, I'll repeat again, how difficult Anthony is to pass. Dan only managed to get that done on the last lap last time round. Theodore thinks about it into the chicane, wisely decides against it. Anthony has to run tighter and gets a slower exit through these corners, which is going to keep Theodore interested. That there is a Rizzler paper between these three cars at the moment. Theodore is definitely the meat in the John's Bueno sandwich. Squeaky tyres as always from Theodore as he's pushing the limits of this car with 10 minutes remaining of the second race, and it's not all over yet. Bueno is very interested going into that turn 1. As we've probably seen, that's the point where drivers get the closest on track to be able to make a move, but nothing has happened as yet. So these three cars not separated by much. Is there going to be a move down into the hairpin? Anthony goes very defensively, which has allowed Theodore to go side by side, and in fact has already passed into the chicane. Anthony's going to attempt to do the switchback. Theodore keeps that big-arsed BMW in the perfect defensive place, and Theodore has moved up into third place, only 4.8 seconds behind Dan Davis. Dan is now only a second behind Martin Morel. Anthony will want to stay on the coattails of Theodore for as long as possible, because that's going to be in his best interest, and not to be under threat from Bueno directly behind. And we can see how close Bueno is as we're going down the start-finish straight. And also how bumpy the circuit is as well. Hot air balloon in our right-hand corner. It looked as though Anthony had to brake a little bit earlier than Bueno in that Corolla. The Hyundai is probably one of those in-betweeny cars in terms of weight. But that Toyota Corolla, as we've seen in the hands of Dan Davis all season, has been terrifically nimble and planted. As left, he goes right. They're going to go side by side into the hairpin. Anthony has the defensive line and the apex. Bueno was wide and has to come back on track. So now 7/10 of a second separate our top two drivers. Last time around was just Dan was 0.2 of a second quicker, but this is our fight for fourth, and that was a little bit of contact made with the barrier on the inside by Bueno, who was caught up in that instant with Dave Goodway in race 1, so had to produce a recovery drive and did so quite well, and managed to climb through a number of positions. We've had both Barry Dunn and Dave Goodway DNF for race number 2, as we've got 7 minutes left of race 2. Ironically, so now Dan is within 0.4 of a second of Martin Morel. If this position is gained, the championship's over, but so Dan probably wants a bit more of a relaxed race in the final race of the season, but Martin's going to want to keep it all on the wire. As we head towards the hairpin, see Bueno is now 0.5 of a second. Theodore is lapping about is lapping massively quicker than both of these two drivers at the moment. So Theodore did a 25.9 last time around, whereas Dan did a 26.7 and Martin did a 27.1. So you can see Theodore in the distance. He's potentially going to be coming at these two drivers very, very quickly. I'm not sure if he's going to run out of laps. We will wait and see. Dan takes a bit more of a wider line on the exit. Martin Morel is going to have to start thinking about defensive driving, as Dan is a Rizzler paper away from the rear end of that Vauxhall Astra, climbing back up the hill onto the start-finish straight before we then plummet down towards the right-hander. Dan has the inside line into turn 1. But side door to side door racing, but both drivers keep the car on track. Dan gives him a little bit of a flash of his lights. That was not much in it from my initial view of it, but we will see if anything is reported to the steward. So that time around, 27.3. Oh, there's more contact between Martin and Dan. And again, more touring car racing. We've got 5 minutes left of race number 2. So, as I was saying, Martin 27.3, Dan 26.9, and 26.8 from Theodore. So he probably needs a couple more 25s to get him closer to this fight. But we have 4.5 minutes left. And Theodore is visibly closer. Adol Bueno is now 2/10 behind Anthony Johns in that fight for 4th place. Anthony's going to want to keep that position, just in case anything happens to these top 3 drivers. As we cross the start-finish line once more, 4 minutes left of the race, and 27.7, 27.8 this time for our top 2 drivers respectively. 26.2 from Theodore, so that's 1.6 seconds gain on this lap alone, largely caused by the fight into turn 1 and the hairpin. Dan gets a great exit once again as they head down towards the right hand hairpin. Martin breaks in the middle of the track in a defensive manner and is going to hope for a good exit. Dan again runs quite wide, trying to carry as much speed through that exit as possible to help him down the straight against the Vauxhall Astra of Martin Morel. Martin Morel trying to go for 2 wins on the bounce, and he's going to have to drive his absolute heart out to be able to do it. He has to remain defensively, but also try and look forward. Maybe he could rely on potentially backing Dan into Theodore to put Dan under threat, and maybe him thinking defensively rather than offensively in challenging Martin Morel. But it's easy to say that being in on the mic rather than having the steering wheel in your hands, where you just think, I just need to go as fast as I can to keep Dan behind. Dan runs very wide through the exit of the final corner. Martin Morel this time around with 27.1, 27.5, 26.4 from Theodore Ivanov. So once again a 1.1 second gain, and that gap is now down to 1.3 seconds. So we are going round and round and round. Anthony Johns has lost 4th place to Adol Bueno. They are still going very side by side by the looks of things. No, it looks, I swear, yeah, there they are going side by side, and Anthony Johns has managed to get the place back through turn 2. But we will stay with our battle for the lead, as that gap is now 0.2 of a second between 1st and 2nd place. Into the chicane once more we go. We've got 1 minute and 45 seconds, so there'll be 1 more lap left after this, I think. Yes, we're going to go on to the final lap. Theodore is not going to gain that time unless he gains it towards the end of this lap. We will look at the lap times when they cross the line to give us a bit more of an idea as we're into the final sector here at the Oulton Park Island course. Dan Davis is going to potentially look for a move down the inside into the final corner, switches to the outside hoping for a better exit. Marcin Morel has to go on the defensive line and pray he gets a good exit. Dan Davis goes across the grass on exit as well. As we head down into turn 1, is the move going to be made? Is Dan going to go left? Is he going to go right? He's going to try and go the long way round this time and hope for a better run up towards the left-hander. That gap now between Theodore is 0.6 of a second, 127.3, 26.8, 26.5, so only 0.3 of a second gain that time by Theodore Ivanov as we're on the last lap of this race. Is Marcin Morel going to be able to fend and keep the win for race 2? It will all pan out. Chris Jones has had an unfortunate DNF once again. Marcin Morel comes across the front of Dan Davis. Oh, that was driving very defensively, shall we say. Marcin Morel goes into the braking zone for the chicane one more time. Dan runs a little bit deep. We've got Theodore right on the back of these two drivers to keep this championship alive. Theodore needs to pass Dan Davis on these in these last two corners. Is he going to manage to do it? It doesn't look as though he is. Marcin Morel has now a 0.7 of a second lead. Dan Davis bouncing over the curbs one more time again as we go into the final sector, and Marcin Morel's gone off, which has gifted Dan Davis the win. Theodore will come home in second place, and Marcin Morel goes from hero to zero, first to third place in the final couple corners of this race 2. Dan Davis comes across and wins. Theodore Ivanov in second, Marcin Morel in third. And let's give a huge round of applause to Rudolph, who's going to come across in fourth place, overtaking Anthony Johns, and Bueno has had a DNF. So Rudolph gets fourth place, Anthony Johns will claim fifth, Mark Stewart will claim sixth place, Alan Palmer in the Dynaco racing team will claim 7th. Tom Brunel will claim 8th place. Harrison Williams in 9th place. And Adel Bueno is in the pits. Chris Jones is in the pits. Barry Dunn is in the pits. And our early DNF was Dave Goodway. So let's play with some spreadsheets and let's try and get the most up-to-date standings. So Dan was third, Martin was third, Theodore was second. So that gap, first and foremost, first inaugural Btcc champion for season 1, and huge congratulations to Dan Davis. Has a gap of 69 points between himself and Marcin Morel. Theodore Ivanov has a 15-point gap to potentially get to second place. So that's going to be one to keep an eye out, that 15 points between second and third, as we will await our grid for race 2. But yeah, that was interesting to the very end. You felt that Marcin Morel was going to claim victory number 2 of the evening. Went wide and went from first to third. Theodore had an off, dropped back down to 5th place, had to battle his way back through Bueno and Johns, also dropped down to 6th, fight through Bueno and Johns, and managed to claim a 2nd place in the end. So very, very eventful. Let's have a look and see what you guys are saying on the stream. So Mark GG says unlucky. Absolutely very, very unlucky indeed. Right, I am going to have a short break whilst this loads, and I will leave you with the commentary for leave you with the racing from Taco Tuesday. Remember, you can catch that also on Formula Racing League TV. Let's get you to the latest action. And we have 19 minutes left, so I'll be back in 2 ticks. Hello and welcome back. We have just under 3 minutes left. I was hoping you were enjoying the racing from our Taco Tuesday event. Just trying to get my screen sorted. Ahead of our final race of the evening. Thank you for joining us on the stream. Really do appreciate your company. So we've got a couple of minutes left. I will leave you with the action and we'll be back in a moment. Right, I've just received the grid for the final race of the season. So we've got Ado Bueno will start in 13th place, Barry Dunn in 12th, Chris Jones in 11th, Dave Goodway will start in 10th place, Theodore Ivanov in 9th, next to Marcin Morel in 8th place. Remember, these two are going to be fighting over 2nd and 3rd place in the championship. Dan Davis, our crowned champion, will start in 7th, Rudolph in 6th, Anthony Johns in 5th, Mark Stewart in 4th, Alan Palmer in 3rd, Tom Brunel, some may say it's a fix, in 2nd, and Harrison Williams will start in pole position. So the checkered flag has been put down for our final practice session, and we will get going very, very shortly for our final race of the season. So this is our 15th race of the championship. Remember, already crowned is our champion, Dan Davis, after a spectacular season. I'm just going to put some heating on because it's cold. So Harrison Williams will start in pole position. Remember, with Tom Brunel in 2nd place, Alan Palmer in 3rd, Mark Stewart in 4th place. Let's remove some of our stuff so my computer doesn't want to cry. We've got one of the drivers at the back flashing their lights. A number of drivers flashing their lights as we wait for the drivers to join the grid. Ado Bueno is one of those drivers who are currently in the pit box. Remember, we do a random grid for the final race of the night, and we are ready, steady. Lights will go out for the final race of the season, and we are go. And that is a very good start from Harrison Williams. Tom Brunel managed to get alongside. Anthony Johns has also had a fantastic start, but not as good as Dan Davis, right up the middle, and has gained multiple places. And he's going! he's gone, and there's a drive. There's Tom Brunel's off the track, and we've got Harrison Williams and Alan Palmer fighting out down into turn 2. Harrison Williams manages to get away. Tom Brunel is in 3rd place, right behind Mark Stewart. Marcin Morel is up to 5th place straight away. He's going to be challenging Mark Stewart down towards the hairpin as they go in almost at a very slow speed. Theodore Ivanov getting door, bang, 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 and gone. So Theodore Ivanov has gone off. Rudolf Bruno is in 6th place. Adol Bueno is in. And Chris Jones goes full send on Bueno and... oh. Not sure what to make of that, but we've got... that's allowed now Dan Davis through as well. So let's start to get our information up to actually be able to see what's going on. But that was interesting. Marcin Morel is looking all over the back of Mark Stewart in 4th place. Harrison Williams currently leads the way with Alan Palmer in 2nd, Tom Brunel in 3rd, Stewart in 4th. Marcin Morel is looking to make it Marcin Morel in 4th as he goes side by side with Mark Stewart down into turn 1, and that postage stamp was licked and sent as we see Theodore. Is that Barry Dunn in the distance? Yes, it is. Theodore Ivanov is currently in 10th place, trying to chase down Dan Davis, our crying champion. Dan Davis has his race 1 nemesis of Anthony Johns in front of him. Looked like he was one of the drivers caught up in the carnage right from the beginning, but good news is Bono and Jones are both still running. Is this going to be the move from Dan? No, it's not. He's backed out of it. Jones runs wide into the hairpin, but that's not going to give an opportunity for Dan to be able to send it. Tom Brunel is right on the back. Is now going to be under pressure from Marcin Morel, member of that championship. To be honest, it was always going to be a tall order to try and climb back those number of points on the final race of the season, but mathematically it was gone after the last couple of corners of the last race when Marcin ran wide and allowed both Dan and Theodore to come through. But this time, is Marcin going to try and go around the outside of Tom Brunel? No, he's going to switch back and try and go on the inside potentially, or maybe a move down in towards the hairpin into the braking zone. And Marcin, Tom goes, I think there's deep, and then there's smack bang deep as Tom goes straight on. Anthony Johns also falls victim of that one. Not sure if there was any contact, but he's now going to have to do a 3-point turn coming out of there. Theodore Ivanov is now chasing down Dan Davis and Tom Brunel. Where's Marcin? Marcin's down in 6th, mate. I'm not sure how you're feeling, but I'm bloody lost in terms of what's happening. But Marcin Morel is now in 6th place. Barry Dunn is all over the back of Rudolph, and then we've got our fight for 7th between Tom Brunel, Dan Davis and Theodore Ivanov, and anything could happen. It looks as though the gloves are definitely off for this final race of the season as Dan Davis thinks about going down the inside, decides against it. We can go round another couple of corners, maybe into turn 1 or possibly turn 2. Tom must feel like he is just waiting for a move to be sent on him. Theodore Ivanov sets the fastest lap of the race with a 26.469. He's now going to Dan's going to go around the outside potentially. That move has already been done. Theodore Ivanov slides through as well, so that drops Tom Brunel down into 9th place. Theodore up to 8th and Dan up to 7th place. I can only assume Marcin had an off at some point, but he's now 2.7 seconds behind Barry Dunn in 5th place. But let's stay with this is really key in terms of the championship places for 2nd place. So currently there is a 15-point gap between 2nd, which is Martin Morel, and 3rd, which is Theodore Ivanov. So still all to play for the podium places in the overall championship. As we jump on board with Theodore going through the final sector of this lap at Oulton Park Island course. Remember, this is the middle of the 3. You've got the Oulton Park International course, which has the banked hairpin and an extra chicane. And then you've got the very, very, very short course, I think it's a national course, which disappears. Well, if we manage to stay on board, I sound a bit like Boris Johnson then. If we manage to stay on board with Theodore for a couple more corners, as we sweep down into this right-hand, you see it disappears off to the right-hand side there. That's where you then go rejoin, so you just kind of do one big loop. And miss out the leg section of this circuit, so a lot shorter lap. Don't forget we have the Btcc 90s next Monday, and our New Year's party event on the 2nd of January to be able to look forward to more rFactor 2 racing action. We have the final of the Masters and Rookies series on Thursday night, as well as the finale of the late night series on Friday. Unfortunately, Competizione will be missing on Thursday for the Rookie series. He has just saw a blow-up lion outside my window and almost scared the crap out of me. He is unfortunately away, so you will be inflicted with me once again. 3 nights this week you get to listen to me. Lucky you. Barry Dunn has closed quite quickly on Rudolph in 4th place. Remember, some of these drivers may not have had a win here in Formula Racing League, as Dan Davis sets the fastest lap of the race with a 26.1. So Harrison Williams, Alan Palmer, Mark Stewart, Rudolph, Barry Dunn will all be fancying their chances, and El Bueno has unfortunately duffed, and he is no longer participating in this race. So we have 11 drivers remaining on track. Bringing up the rears, Chris Jones in 11th, Tom Brunel 10th, Johns in 9th, Theodore in 8th, Dan Davis in 7th, Martin Morel in 6th, Barry Dunn, who we're on board with at the moment, in 5th place. Rudolph just in front. Then we got Mark Stewart, Alan Palmer, and currently leading away by 4.5 seconds is Harrison Williams. Just over 11 minutes left of this final race of the season. Do you know what? I'm going to stay with Barry. Barry hasn't had the best 2 races. We can see just behind, we've got Martin Morel, just behind him you got Dan Davis and Theodore Ivanov in 7th and 8th place respectively. So these 2 cars can come 5 cars very, very quickly, as Barry Dunn thinks about sending it and decides against it and then spins off the track. Be careful if you rejoin, my friend, and he has done so safely. But that drops him down into 8th place, which gives Rudolph a little bit of a reprieve, but that doesn't mean Martin, Dan Davis and Theodore are going to have any ounce of respite. They're going to have to come through some more traffic, or they're going to have to make some overtakes to be able to get onto the podium, so they have a lot of work to do. It looks as though Dave Goodway hasn't joined for this race either, as Theodore Ivanov is thinking about making a move and has made contact with Dan Davis, a bit more contact, as they're going side by side on exit, and I'm sure they'll go side by side into the hairpin here as well, as Theodore gets the power down. Dan Davis is not going to let this one go one iota, and contact is made, and that was always going to happen. Theodore now joins in P8, and that potentially is his battle for P2 over with. Interesting to see what the steward's perspective is of that one at the end, if that one is reported. Anthony Johns has unfortunately DNF, so we've got 10 drivers left on track. It definitely appears to be all gloves are off in this final race of the season, and some inhibitions have been lost. But there are still places to be held, so we've got places in championship up for grabs. I'm not sure Dan was overly impressed by the move made by Theodore and may have squeezed a little bit tighter than normally would on Theodore through the chicane, which ultimately led to Theodore's demise. But Martin Morel is going to try and make the move on Rudolph to go up into 4th place. Looks like he has secured 4th place in the championship now, as Theodore's had to go into the pits to repair probably some considerable damage after greasing the bollard at the hairpin. But not the best angle, should we say. So Rudolph seems to be is a bit more of the cork in the bottle here, as we're approaching a sweeping right-hander down onto the start-finish straight. Dan Davis is interested, very interested. In fact, he's just going to breeze past Martin Morel along the start-finish straight into turn 1, and now Dan is going to be the one who has to attempt to pass Rudolph, but they haven't really gained. Like, Rudolph isn't necessarily holding these two drivers back at the moment, although the lap times last time around don't necessarily depict that. 27.9 for Rudolph and 27.7 for Martin. So Theodore is back out on track in 10th place. Tom has passed Chris Jones in 9th place, but this is a fight for 4th place between Rudolph, Dan and Martin. Rudolph, his first season here in Formula Racing League in any format, has made a very good account of himself this season with his wonderful custom livery. Is Dan going to make the move? I think that move's already made into the sweeping right-hander, and Dan Davis now moves up to 4th place as Martin wants to follow him through and get into 5th place. Rudolph is getting very sandwiched by these drivers. Martin moves across to the right-hand side as Rudolph goes for the move. Optimistic, and his nose was kind of caught out of joint there by Dan Davis as they move now down into turn 2. Martin Morel has moved up to 5th place, trying to follow Dan through the traffic. So next on these drivers' eyes will be potentially Mark Stewart. So Dan has 4 seconds to gain back on him. Last time around Dan was 3/10 slower, but it was involved in a bit of a battle for position. Then we've got Chris Jones and Tom Brunel, 5/10 separating these two from 9th and 8th place. And Dan Davis has gone. Sorry, I was just trying to check what chat was happening on stream, and Dan has boy meets wall and has dropped down into 7th place. So Rudolph, Martin Morel up to 4th, and something is very, very wrong with Dan's car as he's just overshot the final corner Is he going to have to jump into the pits to repair some damage? No, he is not. He's going to carry on going back round. Has 5 more minutes left to survive for our already crowned BTCC champion, as he takes away a bollard which goes flying across the circuit. Chris Jones and Tom Brunel fighting it out as Chris makes a move down through the final corner. Tom gives him ample space as they go front side through side on the exit. Tom manages to get a better exit with the wider entry into the final corner. Chris will want to climb all over the back of Tom through turn 1 and turn 2. We do have our World Touring Car Championship, the Btcc Season 2, which will be announced very, very shortly, with some fun tracks. Really looking forward to seeing what's on the agenda as Chris goes full send into the hairpin and manages to make the move. Tom goes again very, very wide through that hairpin sector, and Chris moves up into 8th place. Barry Dunn is looking at the back of Rudolph once more in the fight for 5th place. 3 minutes left of the season, so roughly 3 laps left. That BMW just always looks very, very, very unsteady into braking zones. Theodore Ivanov sets the fastest lap of the race from down in 10th place with a 25.196. So a fresh set of boots for him and away he goes, but will be ultimately a disappointing result, but still managed to get 3rd place in the championship stand-in. So I'm sure that's some form of consolation to Theodore. But Martin Morel will claim 2nd place and Dan Davis will claim 1st place in the championship. So, it has not been much mention to Harrison, due to the fact that it has been some fighting between Martin, Dan and Theodore throughout the race. But Harrison qualified in pole position and has led throughout the entire race. So he just needs to finish this race off without any mistakes, and he's going to claim the win here at Oulton Park. Alan Palmer is holding off Mark Stewart in 2nd and 3rd place. Martin Morel is 4.1 seconds behind these drivers. Rudolph is holding on to 5th place from Barry Dunn in 6th. Dan Davis is on his own a little bit in 7th place, 16 seconds behind Barry. Then we've got Tom Brunel, who's just overtaken Chris Jones in 8th place, and then we got Theodore Ivanov 63 seconds down, but still going. Let's see what happens between Tom and Chris in these next couple of corners. Is Chris going to be able to retake 8th position back away from Tom Brunel as we head down towards the hairpin? It's going to take I was just about to say, that is a lunge from all lunges on Tom, but Chris manages to break in good time. Crossing the line for the penultimate time is Rudolph and Barry. Let's have a look where Harrison Williams is on the track. So he's navigating the hairpin for the final time, and this will be a fantastic win in the Williams household, I am very, very sure. See, in the battle for 2nd place, Alan Palmer and Mark Stewart, that's 0.8 of a second. Tom and Chris are also very close. But our race winner for race number 3 here at Oulton Park Island Course will be Harrison Williams, as the checkered flag, as the counter timer ticks down to 0. And for the last couple of corners, providing there's no mistakes, Harrison Williams will come across to win race 3 at round number 5 of the BTC Season 1 here in Formula Racing League. And huge congratulations to Harrison. That is a win, and well done from pole position. Alan Palmer and Mark Stewart fighting out towards the bitter end, and Alan will claim 2nd place, Mark Stewart will claim 3rd place, Marcin Morel will claim 4th place and 2nd place in the championship. Barry Dunn's managed to get past Rudolph to claim 5th place. Rudolph in 6th place. Dan Davis, our champion for season 1, is going to claim 7th place, and probably his worst result of the season as well. Followed closely by Theodore Ivanov behind as they go crawling across the line. So huge congratulations to Dan Davis for winning this season, and Theodore, he'll claim 3rd place in the championship. Tom Brunel in 8th place has managed to make some distance away from Chris Jones, but will claim 8th place tonight. And well done, Techie Tom. Chris Jones will claim 9th, and already has crossed the line is Theodore Ivanov. But Harrison Williams is already in the pits. Dan Davis, our season 1 champion, and has been Mr. Consistent and Mr. Bloody Rapid all season long. It's only taken me to race 3 to start dying and choking, so yeah, did all right there. So our champion, Dan Davis, Theodore Ivanov will claim 3rd in the championship. So they're racing towards the end, I'm sure, with Tom just off in the distance behind. So I have been the Pink Pig. This has been FRL's BTCC Season 1 Championship. I have thoroughly enjoyed the action. I hope you all have too. Remember, there is the BTCC 90s event happening on next Monday. The BTC season will move to Mondays from next season as well. Hopefully you will join us once again. Don't forget to tune in on Thursday night for the finale of the Masters and Rookie Series, and also on Friday for the late night season finale. I've been the Pink Pig. Good night.